So this is the Buddha Hall at Yokoji Zen Mountain Center, and I thought it would be an appropriate place to continue our conversation about the Buddha's story and our story, and how relevant his teachings and his life is to us today. So this is the altar, and when we come into this room, we bow. And Tenshin Roshi, the abbot of this monastery, says, please don't think you're bowing to a wooden statue. Really, you're bowing to yourself, to your own nature. And so I invite you to consider that. So in my last talk, I spoke about the way the Buddha gave up on looking for answers outside and took this radical act of sitting still and looking inside for the answer to his deep, longing question, how can I live peacefully in the face of suffering? And he did, in fact, come to an answer. And we'll get to that in the future. The other aspect of this act that he took that is so different, that is so similar to what we do in mindfulness-based stress reduction, is he began to turn towards his experience, towards himself, to look at his body, at his perceptions, at his mind, and at the truth that's around us all the time in the world as it unfolds moment by moment. So the paradigm at his time, the spiritual paradigm, was to try to transcend the human experience, knowing that it was difficult, that it was full of suffering. How can we get as far away from this human experience as possible? So there was this real push towards transcendence of the body through harsh ascetic practices, through trying to achieve altered states of consciousness. And the Buddha actually became quite an adept at many of these practices and was even told that he should be a teacher, and became a teacher in some of these ways of transcendence of altered states. But what he always found at the end was that they only offered a temporary fix. They didn't offer this lasting peace. They didn't answer this fundamental question. And this is so true in our time too. You know, I see this especially because I practice medicine, that we're often chasing symptoms, offering temporary fixes, and not really getting down to the deep source of the distress or the disease. So here he sits, and he's turning toward experience rather than away from it. Just imagine how different that is than what we usually do. When we are uncomfortable, when we're in pain, when we're sad, we want to get away from it as soon as possible, and that's only natural. This isn't meant to be a criticism, it's just an observation. But he actually said, what if we turn our attention with a kind, curious, open awareness and investigate the nature of this suffering, the nature of this body, the nature of these mind states. Let's find out more about them rather than trying to go off somewhere else. And that's what he did. So when he taught about mindfulness, he invited his students to investigate 4 particular fields, and I've just mentioned them, but I'll go over them again. He invited himself and his students to really get interested in and curious about the body, not in a way of taking it so personally, but seeing it as component parts that make up this vehicle through which we live our lives. And he invited some curiosity into the way we perceive the world. So this foundation of mindfulness is sometimes called mindfulness of the Vedanas, or mind states, where we instantly categorize things as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And then he asked us to turn our attention towards the mind itself, to really investigate the nature of mind. And as I mentioned before, at that time, mind also meant heart. It meant the whole shebang, as Tenshin Roshi says. And lastly, he invited us to bring mindfulness to the teachings that come at us from everywhere in this world, from interacting with people, from the force of gravity, from watching the seasons change, from the truth as you experience it in your own life, allowing life to really be your teacher. So this turning towards is a radical act rather than turning away. And when we begin an MBSR class, we invite people who may be in chronic pain, who may be in great distress, to take some time every day and turn quietly and in stillness towards their own experience, feeling the body from the inside rather than judging it from the outside, seeing how the mind wants to cling to things or push things away. And we simply bring a curious, open awareness to this, not a critical, judgmental awareness to it. And as folks continue to practice every day, they begin to find that there is this deep, innate wisdom in the body, in their present moment experience. The very thing that we've been running away from as fast as we can is, in fact, a source of great wisdom and strength.